Welcome to Nachtfrau. Today, 3 times when someone was outside the house.
This is the scene I have created.
I was 16 when this happened. It was a Friday night in late October, around 10 p.m. The sky was that deep, moonless black you only get in autumn. My parents had gone out to dinner with friends, leaving me home alone in our 2-story suburban house. I was in the living room, playing Call of Duty with my headset on, completely absorbed in the game. The house was quiet, except for the audio pumping through my ears. After about an hour, I decided to take a break and grab some snacks from the kitchen. As I walked past the sliding glass door that led to our backyard, I noticed the motion sensor light had turned on. The sudden brightness against the pitch-black yard made me stop. I stood there for a moment, staring out at our patio furniture. Beyond them, just darkness and the silhouettes of trees at the edge of our yard. The light stayed on for about 30 seconds before clicking off. I figured it was probably a raccoon or a stray cat. We'd seen them in our yard before. I grabbed my chips and a soda and headed back to the living room and got back into my game. About 20 minutes later, something made me glance toward the glass door. The motion light was on again. This time, I got up and walked over to the door. I cupped my hands against the cool glass and looked out into the yard. Nothing. Just our empty patio furniture casting long shadows in the harsh white light. The weathered wooden fence at the edge of the property. The wind moving through the oak trees. But then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A figure behind the oak tree. Just standing there, watching the house, maybe even looking right at me. I called 911 with trembling hands. The dispatcher told me to lock myself upstairs. As I backed away from the window, the figure moved. It crossed the yard slowly and tested our sliding door. Locked. Then it disappeared around the side. From my parents' bedroom, I heard footsteps on gravel. They were circling the house, checking every entry point. Then the front door handle, turning slowly, deliberately, testing. After about 2 minutes, the rattling stopped. Police arrived 7 minutes later. They found boot prints under multiple windows. The gate lock had been cut with bolt cutters. A neighbor's camera showed a man in dark clothing watching our house for over an hour before approaching. They never identified him. We got a full security system installed the next week. I'm 24 now. I still won't stay home alone at night. I can't forget that figure behind the tree or those footsteps circling my house like a predator. Since then, I also developed claustrophobia, or rather, a fear of spaces where I could be trapped in. Luckily, everything was locked that night, or who knows what might have happened to me. He definitely knew I was there.
This is the scene I have created.
I'm 28. This story just happened to me a few days ago, and I need to get it off my chest. I work long shifts at a hospital, getting home around 11:30 p.m. almost every night. For about 2 weeks, I've had this unsettling feeling when walking from my car to my door. At first, I brushed it off. I figured I was just exhausted from work. One Thursday, I noticed cigarette butts by my door. 3 of them. I don't smoke. Neither do my neighbors. I thought that was odd, but they were probably from one of the neighborhood kids, secretly smoking or something. One night, I was free from work, so I planned a little movie night by myself. This was 2 nights ago. I was watching When Harry Met Sally, when suddenly I heard footsteps near my front door. Nothing unusual, but they weren't moving away from my door. It was like they were, pacing around or something. I didn't think much of it. Unfortunately, I would come to regret that. When the movie was about halfway, I went into the kitchen to grab some snacks. When I turned off the kitchen light, I stopped in my tracks. A man stood in the shadows between 2 cars. Not moving, not walking, just standing there, facing my window. I watched him from the darkness. He pulled out his phone, and the screen partly lit his face. Middle-aged, baseball cap. He stood there 5 more minutes before casually walking away toward the street. The next night, I had the same pacing in front of my door. I was shocked. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my phone and called 911. Of course, the man was gone when they arrived about 5 minutes later. The police did tell me something disturbing. A few days before, someone had claimed to be my father and asked the landlord for a new key to my apartment. Luckily, she was immediately suspicious. My parents are French and still live somewhere near Paris, and he didn't have an accent. And B, he wouldn't just come uninvited, asking for a key. So she called the police. I panicked and bought 2 new locks, plus a cheap Ring Bell camera I found online. Those cigarettes. Someone standing outside my door, just watching. I'll write an update if anything else happens. And if so, I will have him and his full face on camera.
This is the scene I have created.
I was house sitting for my sister while she was out of town. This was a few months ago. Her place was deep in a rural area. It feels peaceful during the day, but unsettling at night. The house sat at the very end of a long gravel driveway, completely surrounded by woods. The nearest neighbor lived about a mile away. I'm more of a city girl, so I didn't get why she wanted to live so far away from anyone. On a Tuesday night, just after 1 a.m., I was still awake, watching TV in the living room, when the dog suddenly snapped her head up. She froze for half a second, then let out the deepest, most primal growl I'd ever heard from her. The next moment, she bolted to the window, barking like something was wrong. Very wrong. The living room was dimly lit by one small light, so I could see clearly enough to make out the shape of the trees. I got up instantly and looked outside. That's when I saw it. A flashlight. Moving slowly through the trees, maybe 100 feet from the house. The beam bounced gently as whoever held it walked between the trunks. Someone was out there. At 1 a.m, on private property. I brushed it off as a hunter or something. My brain tried to make sense of it, because it lacked answers. I stood there for about 5 minutes, watching the flashlight jiggle between the dark trees. That's when I realized the person got closer and closer to the house. Something was not right. I turned off the light as quickly as possible and hid behind a wall. When I peeked, the flashlight didn't move anymore. It was tilted upwards, aimed directly at the house. A second later, the light shut off completely. Total darkness. Then I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel driveway. Slow, careful, deliberate. They came closer, until I heard someone testing the garage door handle. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought they could hear it. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher stayed calm, but the response time was at least 10 minutes. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought they could hear it through the door. The footsteps moved around the house next, pausing at windows, testing doors, checking every possible way in, like they were following a checklist. I locked myself in the bathroom with the dog and sat on the floor, barely breathing, listening to them circle the house. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, distant sirens broke the silence. The footsteps outside suddenly turned frantic, running, crashing through the woods, disappearing into the night. The police arrived and searched the area. They found pry marks on the back door, boot prints beneath the windows. Someone had been watching the house, waiting for my sister to leave. She came home early. Security cameras went up everywhere. I didn't sleep that night, and I've never house sat for her again. She doesn't blame me